Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Eureka Springs channel. I'm Melody Purdy, your host, and thank you for joining us live this afternoon here from Eureka Springs, Arkansas. And you're joining us for our segment that we lovingly call the Eureka Springs Chat. We are here today with a special individual, and I'm excited to introduce him to you guys. Some of you may have been in Eureka Springs in the last few months or so and seen this gentleman around town. He's been showcasing a book that he has just released. He is a wonderful illustrator and artist, and now author of a book. It's quite a treat for me to be able to bring him to you guys today. If you guys will please welcome to the screen, this is Mr. Sean Fitzgibbon. Hi, Sean.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm doing well.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
you have been around town. I saw you out and about. You had a little was it a book signing for your book really that you were releasing here in Eureka Springs?
Um,
How long ago was that? I saw you in the on the social feed.
I actually I haven't had one yet in Eureka as far as
Okay.
signing goes. I've been there a lot. Uh, okay, so my book was a Kickstarter project, and so
Yeah.
I was in Eureka quite a bit, generating interest in that, and I was talking to a lot of people because I've interviewed so many people and I've met so many people in Eureka Springs, and so that's more what I was doing. I was kind of getting that going,
I see. I see.
and so well, that was last October, and so the book finally came out. Uh, it was a successful Kickstarter campaign. I needed a little over 11,000 for the printing for the initial print run, and I ended up getting going past we going past 15,000 on day one, and at the end of October, I the Kickstarter made nearly $29,000 in 1 month,
Wow.
and so yeah, it was
That's
successful,
phenomenal.
And
Well,
yeah,
a
yeah, I
lot of
was
people are
surprised.
interested. This is
Yeah,
a perfect time of year for us to be having this conversation
yeah.
because,
So
and for those, let's just dive into those that are not familiar with your book. Tell
yeah.
everybody about the book in general. There's just a general overview of the book, what you've done.
Okay, so I'm originally from Southwest Missouri, and as a child, I would, my family, my parents, and my would take my sister and I to Eureka Springs. We'd go on little, day trips, and I was always just fascinated by the town. I was just,
Hmm.
it fascinated me, still does, and I mean,
I know a lot of people
um,
are just people are here in thousands right now. They're so intrigued. I went up
well,
to the
and every
yeah,
time, I mean, every time I go to Eureka, I find something new that I didn't realize was there before. Just
sure,
some
yeah.
little alcove or some little one of the springs that I did something I missed, or just some
Hmm.
little architectural, little nuance item, or bit of geography, or it's just so, or some stairs that I didn't that I missed, and I'll go up and I'll explore. I mean, that happened last time I was in Eureka. I was actually there. Well, been there. I was there last couple of weeks. I'm in Fayetteville, and but uh, I was there for just getting ready for the show coming up. But anyway, I would, my parents would take me down there, and they would tell me all the things about, like, oh, it's one of Robert Ripley's of Believe It or Not. Ripley's Believe It or Not. He deemed it one of the nine most unusual towns in the U.S. And none
Still
of the
holds true.
roads. What's that?
It still holds true.
It still holds
I
true. That's right.
it's,
It
yeah.
is, and so I of course was like, well, why is that? And then my parents would tell me, they'd be like, yeah, well, none of the roads intersect. They just serpentine throughout the town. I mean, I think there's maybe one intersection up by the hospital now, but it's, for the most part, yeah, it's like a European town in many ways. And then of course, like, the Basin Park Hotel is 7 stories, but every floor is at ground level because it's up against a mountain. So,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
that's where the whole town, it's like the geography and the architecture just sort of coalesce into one just beautiful tapestry, and then of course, I think I remember they would say like the St. Elizabeth's Church is the only church where you enter through the bell tower
Correct.
in the
Hmm.
world, and so that was fascinating, and when it's a beautiful church, by the way, and it's also just the fact that Eureka Springs is the only town where the entire downtown is on the historic registry.
Right.
And
Right.
that's fascinating. I mean, and it's understandably, because like you can look at an old photograph of down any given street, and then look at a contemporary photo, a modern photograph, and they you can just match them up like it
They
doesn't
do line up. They do.
lines up. Yeah,
And we have to, we have the, to thank for that, we have our Historic District Commission,
yeah,
who, you cannot paint your house a different color or
yeah.
add anything on without approval, to keep its integrity,
Love
historic
it.
integrity. So we have them to thank for keeping our our historic district, looking as if you've stepped back in time. Um,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah,
so you were
wonderful.
intrigued by all these stories about Eureka, or and
Yep.
all these like wonderful oddities. So then you had to go for the ultimate oddity of Eureka Springs, I think, and it doesn't matter what era you're talking about,
Yeah,
whether it's in 1886, when the Crescent Hotel was built,
yeah.
or if you want to talk about every decade thereafter. There is a rich story that follows this hotel, and still to this day
Mhm,
there are
mhm,
historic things happening
mhm.
there. So, when did you find out about the Crescent, and where did this obsession? How did this? Tell us about this little bit of a journey into the Crescent Hotel.
Well, so as a kid, I mean, was always, and I still am. I've always kind of liked a mystery. My mom and I we'd watch. We always liked Alfred Hitchcock, and we'd watch old
Mm-hmm.
movies and old and I was just always a fan of that kind of thing, just kind of mystery. Also like gothic stories, and like I've always been a fan of you know stories like Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, or well, going
Mm-hmm.
back to Hitchcock, another Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. I've always liked these kind of gothic stories, and then to me the Crescent Hotel kind of embodies a lot of that, because it's this beautiful, very unusual structure at the highest point of town, and it's in this sort of American Gothic, uh,
Mm-hmm.
Victorian quasi Victorian architecture, and it and then we would go on the ghost tours. We
Mm.
never really stayed. I didn't stay at the Crescent until I was later. But and I've stayed there many times. But as a kid, we were only like 100 miles from the Crescent, from Eureka Springs, growing up, and so we would just kind of make these day trips. But we'd stay and go on the ghost tours every now and then, and now at this time, I mean, this is like in the 1980s, and so a lot of at this time, a lot of the ghost tours were pretty sensational, because
Oh yeah, yeah.
they really didn't have a really firm grasp on the history. Nowadays, thanks to Keith Scales, friend of mine, and he was the head ghost tour guide at the Crescent. He's a wonderful historian,
Absolutely.
so incredible. It's such a yeah, just Keith's the greatest, and he really made that the ghost tours really something else, because I always think that a good ghost tour is a history tour. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's
Yes.
it,
Contextualizing, the time, and being able to relate that so that people can understand what it would have been, what it would have felt like, to be a
absolutely.
part of that, era. Yeah, Keith
Hmm.
does brilliantly.
Oh
Brilliantly
yeah.
did that. Yes.
Oh, for sure. And now, so this is long before Keith was here. So it was still kind of like the wild west of like it. And it's not, it's just that, there wasn't a whole lot of information at that time, and they weren't,
Hmm.
and on what had happened, and they'd kind of tell the broad strokes, but there were a lot of things that they would sort of gloss over, and
Sure.
they would kind of tell the ghost stories that of like, Michael, the guy that worked on the, the stonemason that fell to his death and all this kind of stuff. And they would say, oh, the nurse pushing the gurney down the hall and things like that. And then I'd be like, a nurse pushing a gurney down, what? I'm like, and then they'd be like, oh yeah, it was a cancer hospital during the
Right.
late 30s. And he was a fraudulent medical practitioner, but then they just kind of gloss over that and go on. And I would just be
Move
like,
on. Like, wow.
what?
Full
Huh?
stop. What's that about, right?
You're right. Like, well, yeah, rewind. Wait, no, I want to know about that.
Yeah.
That is, and so, and so uh, that just kind of stuck with me over the
Mhm.
years. And,
Mhm.
and I'm from, Southwest Missouri, but in 2003, I moved to Fayetteville to pursue my master's in fine art at the University of Arkansas. And, and yeah, I just, and while I was working on that, that's when I met my wife, my fiance at the time. She's my wife now, but we would, we go down to Eureka Springs. We take these trips down there, and this is still just before Keith was there, and so they were still kind of that, the same kind of stories. And so I was just like, after I graduated, maybe 2 years after that, when that would have been, I graduated in '06, and so around 2008, I was like, I want to, we stayed there once, and we went to the Carnegie Library, and I started doing a little bit of research. And the next thing you know, I'm like, we're taking a trip to Muscatine, Iowa, where Norman Baker's from, and I'm just getting, because it's just it.
It's
I was just so,
fascinating. Yeah,
yeah, I was
you
just
were
so, yeah,
immersed into it. Really were.
yeah, I really was. And I mean, and since then, I've stayed at I've gotten a, what do they call it, like a residency at the Writers Colony at Dairy Hollow. And it was a week long residency. And during that week, this was years ago, because I worked on this for like 15 years, but I interviewed just people all over Eureka Springs, and I've interviewed people all over Muscatine, Iowa. I've gone through cemeteries, libraries, databases, archives of all kinds. And
So
and
Muscatine, for those that are not aware, Muscatine, Iowa is where Dr. Baker,
yep.
and for those that are listening, if you don't have a clue where we're headed with all this, the 1886 Crescent Hotel here in Eureka Springs is known for it to be very, very haunted. And Dr. Baker was one of the quack doctor. He was the quack doctor who came to town and, for lack of a better word, terrorized families. I think, can't think of it being a kind thing in any way, but
I mean,
he was so fraudulent with
yeah,
what he
yeah,
did,
yeah,
and taking care of cancer patients and inserting them with all sorts of who knows, God knows what,
yeah, yeah.
experimenting on them and doing autopsies on them. And then he wasn't a real physician. And so, Miss in Iowa, tell the people a little bit about why you were intrigued with Iowa, is because that's
Yeah, so Norman Baker is from Muscatine, Iowa,
right.
and so yeah, he was born and raised in Muscatine. He was the youngest of 10. His father was a
Mhm.
machinist. His mother was a writer. He became a machinist. Kind of followed in his father's footsteps. He drops
Mhm.
out of high school around 10th grade and works as a machinist. He has a contentious, relationship with his father. Goes on to work at a Bopal button factory in Muscatine. It's a pearl button factory. And after another contingent, he has another argument with the owner there. He makes enemies with everybody, and so. But
He
anyway,
does. Yeah.
and then he goes on to do, like, he becomes like a vaudeville magician and mentalist, and so he's kind of on this vaudeville circuit. He's also works as a circus barker, and
Mhm.
carnival barker. Well, circus. He works at a circus, but and so anyway, this sort of this vaudeville sort of um, uh, magician sort of showmanship that he sort of acquires during the early 20th century, that this portion of his career is what would kind of carry through the rest of his life.
It's like
This
his training for it all,
that
wasn't it?
right,
It's
exactly,
trained him to do
exactly,
it. Yeah.
right, because it's all like smoke and mirrors and
Uh-huh.
sleight of hand
Mhm.
and he just and so but the thing is about it, the thing about him is that he actually was brilliant. Like he was a very smart, savvy businessman, and he was an entrepreneur.
A smart
Um,
criminal.
he was a smart criminal, absolutely. He he uh, he then starts he tinkers around with because he has a machinist training. He's tinkering around with he marries a woman briefly. One of his he calls them his tangly girls. They're the girls that kind of his assistants
Mhm.
when his assistant whenever he's doing these mentalist tricks. Like it's one of those things where he'll like guess. He'll ask people questions and make guesses about
Mhm.
their family or deceased loved ones or whatever, and he's learned these tricks and he's able to kind of do that as well as like the levitation, all these kind of illusion sort of tricks. And anyway, he marries one of his assistants, and her name's Teresa Pender, and her father is a musician. And so from that relationship with with his father-in-law, he starts to kind of get interested in organs and calliopes, and so he develops what's known as he called it the calliophone, which is a air calliope. Wait, yes, an air calliope. Before that, all the calliopes ran on steam. They were steam powered,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
he developed the first air calliope. And there's some question as to whether or not that patent should really be attributed to to
Oh
him,
yeah,
or
right.
and so, but it is. But I don't know. I kind of wonder if it wasn't if her father didn't develop that. But anyway, um, uh, he makes millions off this. He starts a factory in Muscatine. He starts this he calls it the calliophone, the Tangly calliophone. Tangly is a word that he invented, and it's like his stage
Mhm.
persona. And anyway, he makes what would be in today's money, the calculation inflation or inflation calculation would it'd be like, yeah, millions of dollars. And so
Yeah.
he's wealthy, and then next thing you know, he's starting his own radio station. And this is in the early days of radio. This would be in the early 20s. And so uh, he becomes this, and his radio station is at the highest point of Muscatine, Iowa, called KT&T, and that's an acronym for Know the Naked Truth.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
and at the same time, he also has what would be very similar to like a Sears and Roebuck catalog, where he's got businesses like where he's selling like all the way from like canned goods to like rakes and car
He
tires.
dabbled in everything.
And he
Pretty
dabbled in
good.
everything. He even had a service station in Muscatine, and his radio station was really quite entertaining. It was quite the spectacle. Like people would go out to KT&T Hill on Sundays, and he had all kinds of shows and bands playing and all that kind of thing. But and if he had stopped there and just kind of just stayed,
Stayed there.
stayed at that point, he probably would have lived out his days. Just
Yep. Well
uh,
off
would
and
yeah,
well, yeah.
yeah,
So yeah,
would have
and these multiple businesses. If you're visiting here in Eureka Springs and you do go up to the Crescent Hotel, inside the lobby there of the hotel is actually Dr. Baker's desk. There in the
right,
lobby, you can see it there in the
yeah,
lobby, and it's like five sides.
yeah,
It's got five different areas, and they say that he worked off each area he had a business on each area of the desk as he worked through that.
that's right,
Sean,
yeah,
this is for you had this inspiration. This you dived into this whole story head first. You fell in
yeah,
love with this whole story,
yeah,
uh, the intrigue and the mystery of Dr.
yeah,
Baker and the Crescent Hotel years there with him. So the book you named it "What Follows Is True," which I love the
hmm
way you framed
hmm
that up.
Yeah.
Now, is this focusing specifically on the Dr. Baker years within the illustrated book?
Yeah, it really is. Like
Okay.
I talk about the history leading up to that, but it is
Mhm.
really focusing on that period because that's really, I mean, that's that period of history that there was sort
Mhm.
of there was that there it was really not even that long. It was just like from 1936 to 1939 or 1937 to 1939, and it was like up until his arrest. And it's one of those things where I was, it's like so many people talk about that. I'd heard about that all my life, and
Right.
it's just so legendary. And but there really, I didn't know that much about it. Like I would ask people, and a lot of people would tell me all these different things. Some of it didn't quite match up. It didn't really make any sense.
Well,
And
there's a lot
so,
of different legends that are, have not been proven to be true. Some
right,
have been embellished over the years. And I
yeah,
just want to say that I just
yeah,
looking through online here, and if you want to go, guys, and look at more information about this book,
yeah,
be sure and visit the website. You've
yeah,
got SeanFitzgibbon.com. If you go there, you can see all the information about
yeah.
the book. I don't know. I've never had anyone illustrator that I've ever been come in contact. I can't. I was like, for you, Sean, I couldn't
Yeah.
decide if you were, uh, you know, you're such a rich historian in the midst of looking for the research for all of this, but your illustrations, I can just tell the passion of this story coming through in these illustrations. And you are an illustrator, an
Yeah,
artist.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
your trade, and then to
yeah,
dive into this with all this history.
yeah.
Did this wake you up into wanting to do more historical vignettes about the past? Or
It,
is
it
this a one-off for you? What do you think?
well, no, it's interesting you asked that because no, actually, so what follows is true is going to be it's the umbrella over a series that I'm starting, and so yeah, I'm going to be
Nice.
and yeah, it's one of those things that like I said, the Crescent Hotel was one of those places that I was always intrigued by as a kid, and it just stuck with me. And so that's sort of the catalyst. That's why
Mhm.
I did that. And just hearing about this guy who wheels into town with a so-called cure for cancer, so I'm like, what? And then he's in Eureka until his arrest and
Right.
for 2 years. And so and there's other stories that that I was one of those kids that whenever I'd go to the library, um, I was always getting those books on like strange historical places
Right. You're
and just
fascinated by it, aren't you?
I am, and I still am. I nowadays I mean I'm always looking at like Atlas Obscura. That's a great website, and
Mhm.
they put out some great books. So, and if you ever get a chance, I highly recommend checking out Atlas Obscura. Um, and yeah, it's like, and they just tell interesting places all around the world. And so anytime you go on a trip anywhere, you should look up, and you can find interesting place to go visit, and that has really
Right.
interesting histories. um yeah, and I mean, I was a little kid when like In Search Of was on, and I would just watch these things with fascination because I've always liked, I'm a fan of, like I said, like Hitchcock and the Twilight Zone, stuff like that. And
Mhm.
which and because I was that was a little before my time, but then In Search Of came on when I was like when I was around. But my parents are always telling me stories about Twilight Zone. And so then once I finally was able to watch those, I would just
Right.
love that. And but I love that. I also, like I said, I have this sense of space, and I love architecture.
Mhm.
I love places. I love travel, and I love traveling to interesting places, and I love history. And so um and
Well, and the way you've done and I just wanna make a comment about
yeah,
my first impressions of the artwork that you've
yeah,
created to tell the story. Uh, the way that you use lighting,
Oh
was
yeah.
brilliant,
Oh, thank you.
brilliant in how because to me, the crescent, you can't show the crescent ever in its full light,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's sort of it's this mysterious place. No matter what time of the year you go there,
Yeah.
the hotel has a certain vibe to it year round.
Hmm.
Obviously, that people are drawn to it, but
Hmm.
the way you use light, uh, it's like you're shining a light on some things that maybe people are not quite knowledgeable about the hotel.
Yeah.
It's like you're shining a light on it a little bit, but you're also
Yeah.
leaving that whole mystery of
Oh yeah.
what
Right.
lies in the shadows. I just love the way that that was brilliantly done.
Oh, thank
That
you.
was the overwhelming feeling I had
Oh,
going through the artwork. And it's
wonderful.
just brilliantly done. What can people expect as they flip through your book? Could you kind of give what they'll experience and how does it unfold for people within the book?
I really did want it to be an immersive experience for people because I really one of the best things people can tell me is that after they read the book, they're like, "Well, I want to go to Eureka Springs now. I want to go," and I'm like, "That's great because that's what I want. I wanted you to. I pay so much. I pay close attention to all the landmarks and all the
Hmm.
everything that I'm drawing in the town. I mean, I spent a lot of time in Eureka
Yeah, I
with
can
my
tell it.
sketchbook and drawing and sketch. I mean, and taking pictures and interviewing, just doing everything I can to be as authentic. But yet, I also, like I said, there is sort of a dreamlike quality to Eureka Springs, and I want to keep that.
True.
And I do love that I love that sense of mystery because I think there is a lot of mystery in Eureka Springs, and I love and I want to capitalize on that as well.
Hmm.
With the mystery um and like I said, this is a it's so many people know a little bit about the history of the Crescent Hotel, and particularly, and I know so many are intrigued about those 2 years, and not to say that the other, the hotel has many different chapters that are
Oh gosh, yes.
fascinating, absolutely fascinating, and
Yeah.
and uh, and I know other people are working on some other, like Rebecca J. Becker's working on a book about when it was
Hmm.
the Crescent Conservatory
Right.
for young women. I can't wait to read that whenever that
Yeah.
comes out. She's done
Yeah.
so much research,
Sure.
and but this is just that those 2 years that and it tells the history of about Baker and what was his motivation, who was this
Right.
guy, and that's what I wanted. I want people to come away going, okay, now I think I have
Now I get it.
a better understanding of who this was,
Hmm.
and what it was all about, what the those that period of time was. But like I said, at the same time, I want them to also come away with this love of Eureka Springs and its wonderful history, because it's one of the few places that I've ever been where almost everybody in the town is like an historian. Like they all know a lot about the history of the town. And I mean,
Right.
I can't tell you
Well, it's a
many
part of our
towns.
culture.
It
It's
is.
a part
It's
of our culture. I mean,
right.
that's
Yeah,
the makeup of all the people that live here.
yeah,
We all came here because we were drawn to the stories,
that's right. That's
and,
right.
yeah,
Yep, it's fascinating. There's
it
not
is.
many places I've ever been where people can just tell you story after story of the history of their where they live. It's like I
Right.
couldn't tell you much about where I'm from, but I could tell you so much about Eureka's rant. You know,
Right. Well, as a tourist town, we're all frontliners, to
yeah,
tell the stories. We're all there,
yeah,
so
oh yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I hope that when people read the book and then they can contribute to the story, and they can be
sure.
tell uh, and then also I've told my story about, but there's so much out there about, even with with Baker or any other period of the Crescent or any other place within
Yeah.
the Eureka and the Ozarks, that
It's like peeling
there's
back an onion everywhere you
oh
go.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
everywhere, any
yeah,
house in Eureka
right,
Springs, any
yeah,
hotel,
yeah,
any given day, Uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
there are multiple layers of stories
Yep. Yep.
that'll unfold depending on what decade you want to talk about.
Right. Right.
You know, and so that's the richness of Eureka Springs. It is a step back in time. Anytime, any weekend you come here, and people are continuing to add to their stories every visit. That's one
Mhm.
of the things that I love probably the most
Yep.
about the Crescent Hotel.
Yep. Yep.
It one of their slogans, make lifetime memories here.
Oh yeah. That's
And
right.
so, and that's what people are doing today.
That's
Everybody
right.
that comes, I was just there over the weekend. I was shooting a
Mhm.
wedding
Mhm.
there, and in the middle of the whole lobby, people were
Oh yeah.
talking about, "Oh, did you feel that?" Or I was staying in one of the haunted rooms, and my water came on at midnight. All these stories, and there's continuing. I think the ghosts actually are keeping the stories alive
Oh yeah.
because they keep acting out with the guests and such. I
Right.
was a skeptic for many, many years. I
Uh-huh.
thought it was just a marketing thing,
Sure.
to
Sure.
sell beds,
Right.
I thought that was all it was about. And then as a professional
Mhm.
photographer, I started experiencing my own abnormal things in my images, and which are, if you've ever heard them talk about the little orbs,
Oh yeah.
they are
Uh-huh.
specifically,
Yep.
they're not
Yep.
glares. They're,
Right.
I've seen those.
Sure. Yeah.
But so there is something to be, you know, continued to keep an eye on. What does that
Yeah.
really mean? I don't know what that really means, but there's something. And I think people are continuing to add to the stories
Oh yeah.
at the Crescent Hotel. Sean,
Yeah.
I love what you've done. This is a
Oh,
fabulous book
thank
for
you.
anyone who wants to dive into the history of those that particular time frame here at the Crescent Hotel. They'd make a wonderful gift for Christmas for folks.
Oh yeah.
Lots of
Yeah.
people, if you visited Eureka Springs, this is a great book for you to grab and reminisce about your time visiting up at the Crescent Hotels. Is a
Oh yeah.
great book to have on your coffee table. Sean, it's just it's a luxurious, rich. I love the illustrations. You're so wonderfully talented.
Thank you.
Um, so you're going to continue on with this. It sounds like you're going to continue on with this little experiment in historical illustrative books.
I
How
am.
exciting!
I am. Yeah.
You've caught the fire, and it looks like you're going to keep rolling. So,
I am. I'm gonna keep rolling with it. Yeah.
well, I'm excited.
I've got plans, and so I will keep you updated
Well,
on
please do. So, folks, here is the website for y'all to check out Sean's book and all of his other bodies of work that he
that.
does, and all his future projects. I'm sure he'll keep us all updated. Sean, thank you so much for literally shining a light on the Crescent Hotel for
Yeah.
everyone to see in a different way. It's brilliant. It
Well,
really
thank you.
is. And
Thank you.
thank you for, I always want to applaud all the people who, even though you are focusing on perhaps a dark part of our history,
Oh, well,
I still going to celebrate you as a good person
oh,
because,
thank you.
I always say that to understand our future, we have to understand our past.
Sure. That's right.
And even though this might be a dark part of our history here at the Crescent Hotel, I think of all the stories that have come thereafter that are the good ones,
Oh, for
and
sure. For sure.
having that history, it might be dark, but it's still a part of something that we need to appreciate and understand. And
Right.
you've done it so well.
Oh, well, I say in my book that, a hotel is is much like a stage, with many
Mm,
different actors. And I'm just
yeah,
focusing on, pretty much that those 2 years and that,
yeah,
so that performance that during that, with
that
all
was a
these things
performance for sure.
with
Yep.
like, and it was a performance. And in fact, I use curtains a lot and like
Uh huh.
stage curtains, and he's flanked oftentimes by curtains.
Like,
And
yep,
so right. It's going back to that, harkening
yep.
back to his days as a magician. It's like, it's chicanery,
Sleight of hand.
but
Yep.
but that being said, it's and that's one thing that's so fascinating about hotels and a beautiful old hotel like the Crescent Hotel, that it's constantly, it's new, a
Yep.
new cast of characters come through every day, every year, it's always changing,
Every
and it's just
hour up there for sure.
every hour, and that and so, and there were just all these different colorful, wonderful chapters throughout the history,
Mhm.
and I, I and like I said, the hotel itself is a character. In fact, it's may even be a little more of a character than Baker. I put so much attention into the hotel
That's
because I just
true.
have such a love for the hotel and to the town. I think the town's
Yeah.
a character,
Yeah, we are.
and it is. And I hope that I can't imagine that it doesn't shine through that I absolutely love Eureka Springs. If you
No,
read,
I think it's pretty
if
obvious you do,
yeah,
yes, for
right,
sure.
right. So
You wanna run for mayor?
oh well, I'm just gonna work on these books, and I'll let people enjoy them. I that hopefully the
Well,
mayor can read a book. That's what.
there you go, it's good. Well, Sean, thank you so much for doing the work. A lot of years
Thank
of
you.
work put in this, a true love affair and a passion for bringing this to everyone to enjoy and to reminisce. And so, thank you so much. We can't wait to see what you do next, and
Okay.
hopefully, maybe you'll shine a little light on something a little bit brighter this next time. Maybe I don't
Oh,
know. We'll see.
it is. It
Okay, all
is.
right,
It
good.
is. Yeah.
Little yin and yang there, Sean. Okay,
Oh yes,
little yin and yang.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for joining me to talk about this wonderful book. And congratulations! It sounds like it's doing really well. It's selling well, and if you want to get your copy, you can go to your website, correct, and click
Yeah.
there and purchase from your website. If people want to
Yeah.
purchase it for gift
Yeah.
giving for this holiday, and
Yeah.
add it
Just
to your
click.
collection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just click on store on my website
All
and
right.
on SeanFitzgibbon.com, and there it is.
All right.
It's-
Thank you, Sean. You're wonderfully talented.
Thank you.
We were very fortunate that that you fell in love with the Crescent Hotel. We're very fortunate that
Uh,
you are bringing the part of our history to light for everybody to enjoy. Thank you so very much.
well, thank you.
All right.
This has been wonderful.
All right. Take care. We'll see you next
All
time,
right.
and
Yeah.
keep us informed. And come back and let us give us an update later when you've got something new to announce. In the meantime,
Okay.
and enjoy your sales of your book and
All
continued
right.
success.
Oh, and really quick, I just want to say if anybody would like to come out, I'm going to be in Eureka Springs
That's
signing
right.
books.
That's right.
Yes, I'm going to be.
Uh,
Yeah.
November the 2nd at the Historical Museum here in town. There is
Yes.
enter into downtown. November the 2nd from 5 to 7 p.m. You can meet with Sean there and sign. He'll
Yep.
sign a book for you and sell
Yeah.
you a book and
Yeah.
get you on your way.
And Jeff Danos, the director there, he's going to have. Uh, so there'll be original pages from my book will be on display, as well as actual artifacts from the Baker Hospital,
Oh, wow.
and so it's going to be a really
That's an immersive
interesting.
experience. That'll be
Yes,
great.
yes, and
Awesome.
I love immersive experiences. So and that,
Totally.
yeah.
All
So
right.
definitely, if you can make it out next, and it's going to be up through January the 31st, but I'll be there next Wednesday,
Yeah.
signing books, and so yeah,
Cool.
so
Cool.
come
Cool.
on out. I love to meet everybody.
All right.
So
Thanks, Sean. We
you
appreciate
bet.
you. See you next
Thank
time.
you. All
Bye bye.
right. Bye.
Fantastic book. You guys got to go ahead and look at it. Check it out. It's called What Follows Is True. Crescent Hotel by Sean Fitzgibbon. Wonderful gentleman. Wow. Just wow. If you guys just flipping through this book and the illustrations, they're just wonderful. Such talent. So lucky that he fell in love with the Crescent and has looks like he's going to continue on that conversation about Eureka Springs. How cool is that? And how lucky are we? All right, guys. Thank you for watching Eureka Springs channel. We've gone a little long, I know today. But we wanted to be able to give all the information that Sean wanted to give us too. We appreciate you watching us this long. Be sure and share this segment with people and within your social network and help spread the word about Eureka Springs, Arkansas. It is one of the most unique places on the face of the earth. If you haven't been to Eureka Springs, you need to get in the car and come on over or hop on a plane and check us out. We are we are probably the funkiest corner of Northwest Arkansas that you will ever imagine. There's no place on earth. Everybody that rolls into town every weekend, they'll run through town and they'll just ride around with their mouth open and say, boy, this is Arkansas? Who knew? Who knew that such a place existed? Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Come on over. You'll be glad that you found us. Thank you for watching us today at Eureka Springs channel. And as always, we appreciate your support by watching our shows. And we'll bring you another segment again next week. Thanks for watching us, guys. We really appreciate you. Bye-bye, guys.